You got the distribution call, you got the placement, you did everything right. And somewhere between the purchase order and the shelf, something went sideways. Your product isn't there, or it's there, but it's wrong. Or nobody can tell you either way. Every CPG brand hits this wall. Most of them hit it more than once. I'm Jordan Carter, founder and CEO of Eileen. Know Thy Shelf is for founders and CPG superstars who are done taking anyone's word for what's happening at the shelf. Real story, real data, one question underneath all of it. Your product is listed as in stock. Is it though? Matt, I've been looking forward to this one. FroPro is a brand that you started as a snack that you made for yourself just to survive the day. And it's turned into something that's now carried across Whole Foods in 30 states. And I'm excited for everybody to hear your story and hear more about this product. So to get things going, can you take me back to what FroPro was like before it was a business and what your life was like before FroPro existed?
Yeah, awesome. Jordan, thanks for having me on the show. My name is Matt Williams, founder of FroPro Snack Bar. Yeah, what it was like prior was, me starting over in life in 2010, making this in my kitchen, putting some ingredients together that I enjoyed. I'm a sweet tooth guy, love my sweets. And yeah, just kind of needed something for the day to day that I needed for me, biking around town and working the different jobs I was working. And lo and behold, just started sharing it with the people that, were either in the gyms I was working out of, some of the athletic fields that I was at, as well as, sharing it with at the time, my girlfriend, now wife's, family and friends. And it kind of took off, right? The idea of creating something that you love or something that is important to you. Again, there was a lot of hesitation because obviously when you make something, you don't want negative feedback. But that's obviously really important when you do things like this. And, kind of when I started out, obviously I love cold things. I'm down in South Florida, love dessert. So initially when creating this, it was made by freezing a tray, kind of like a brownie tray, and cutting them up into little squares and putting them in a plastic pouch and traveling around. It was really just, I don't even say it was more basic than basic, I think. Before it started, it was just like dump a bunch of cool stuff into a mixing bowl, lay it out and freeze it. And it's come a long way. Yeah. I mean, like what you said with the intro, I mean, where we are with distribution in terms of our biggest retailer is Whole Foods. But the fact that down in Florida, not a lot of people live here year round. So when people leave here, they go back to places or other states and they start sharing the product and our story. And that's kind of where, we were just, hey, we're just a snack bar. And then, the community down here really helped build us up, and we wouldn't be anywhere really without the South Florida community and what kind of transpired here.
And so even a step before that, I think when you and I first spoke, the sobriety piece was a huge part of this founding story. And I think the mission of FroPro. Do you mind touching on that, how it jumped
Yes.
you into this pathway?
Yeah. So I was a teacher and a coach, battled, kind of alcoholism and addiction for a while, never really got honest, knew there were signs. And then I got sober May 17th, 2010, just celebrated 16 years, which is crazy in itself. Thank you. And, this was one of those things where you start over. I wasn't really getting hired, obviously, as a teacher to work in a nice school due to, my poor decision making. And, it was just, again, revolving around alcohol. I love teaching. I love coaching. I just, it's not a good look when you're, a recovering, again, there is the stigma. But, I started over down here. I started over in South Florida and kind of tried to figure out what I wanted to do next. And, worked in some food places, in my life, restaurants, bars, different things. And kind of had this opportunity to continue to mentor, tutor, wasn't working in a school district. But like I said, I started making these products for myself. I lost my driver's license. I was biking around South Florida. If you're from Florida, it's not like a transportation in a major city. Sometimes the buses come, sometimes they don't. And sometimes you're just kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. So yeah, packing a bag every day, getting out and kind of hitting the road with my clients and the jobs that I was trying to work to kind of get back on my feet. And it was one of those true things of like sharing something that I loved, again, worried about what people were thinking. And initially when I started sharing the product in like a gym setting that I was coaching out of, I didn't want people to know it was mine because I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. I didn't want people to be like, oh, let's just say this is good, that the guy's trying to get his life together and let's be nice. So it was great. I really got some honest feedback and it wasn't really negative. It was just like, oh, I like this, or, again, peanut butter based, one of the most consumed products in American households. And it just kind of took off and it led to someone, again, anybody that I met in this process was a lot smarter than me, had experience in either retail, had experience in, kind of the restaurant world, and were like, hey, this is great. Maybe try this, tweak the recipe here. Maybe you decide to go plant based because more people can consume. This is back in the day, like plants are a little bit more digestible than whey or some kind of whey substitute. So I learned, and the product kind of evolved over the last 16 years, not only with the product itself, shape, the size, the quality of the protein. Again, I started with metrics, if you can remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, again, what was in my cupboard. So I learned about like what quality ingredients were. I learned about what was really important to people that were consuming a product. Because if I'm going to do anything, and again, never created this to be a business, but if I wanted to share it, I wanted everybody to be able to enjoy it. Obviously, if you have a peanut allergy, you're not going to enjoy it. I can't please everybody. But that's the thing. Just kind of learning as I go, and talking with people that, again, were smarter than me or been in the industry, and just kind of understanding. I had a lot of people that, again, were kind, and a lot of people that thought their best interest was like, hey man, a refrigerated snack bar, that's kind of stupid. It's like, I don't think you understand what the space is like, and getting into refrigeration and or freezer or anything. In the depths of everything that I felt was like, this is a good product. I like it. Other people like it. And I'm going to just keep rolling with this and evolve as we grow. And what started, like I said, out of my kitchen, out of my pantry, is now in 30 plus states and shared on major retailers' shelves, in the refrigerated section, in the grab and go cooler, in the door that opens. Just kind of, it's super grateful for it, right? Because again, I'm still learning. We're still learning. My wife came on board in 2016 and kind of really knew how to automate the business, because I was writing everything down in a notebook, and we just kind of grew there. So now she's the acting CEO. And we have a team of people here. And what's great about connecting it full circle is being able to offer the opportunity for people that are looking for work when they're starting over, a safe place, a healthy environment, a good team, not a questionable source of income, and they feel good about it, right? They can show up here. We have a great culture here. We also have a gym that's attached to it. So there's this just like very good community of like health, wellness, positivity, and essentially, learning how to grow a CPG product in a really, really crowded space.
And I think that's actually something that going 16 years ago, there were really any refrigerated bars that I could think of. I think the first one that came on my radar was Perfect Bar in 2016, 2017, right? And so you were way ahead of the game. Tell me about that. Like, you think, were you too far ahead of the game? Or what was that like?
Well,
I know that space was, even back then, bars in general were still pretty lean in terms of,
yeah, like I'm gonna age myself here, but like I remember when Power Bar was a thing, and I was a kid, and like it was a gold wrapper, and I'm like, what is this? And I loved it, and it was at my local delicatessen growing up in New York. But when I got into the space, what's really cool about it is learning from these companies and seeing like a Perfect Bar, right? And back then, before they sold, even in the 2012, 13s, it was the family. It was the sons and the daughters of the guy. And they were super kind. Again, I didn't know their financials. I didn't know how they grew. I think they were private equity, but they were able to be everywhere and anywhere. So like when we would go to events, they might have had like a 5 booth or 5 kind of layout of like attack. And we were like a little small table, like a 10 by 10 in the corner. But they were nice. They were really good to me. And they weren't like, hey, get out of here, man. And the other bar that was around at that time was RX Bar. It wasn't refrigerated, but I watched them grow too. I watched their packaging change, and it was, if nothing more of like a, hey, this is possible moment kind of along the way. But again, when doing this, like I said, started with Glad press and seal, like cutting it myself. I didn't know things like, I didn't know you could buy, oat flour. I used to ground my own oats in a magic bullet. You remember those things? Like, cause I was making small batches back then. So I learned as I went. And then as we kind of grew with the, idea of like a KitchenAid countertop mixer into like wrapping it by hand to like a small tabletop packaging machine, and growing to what we have today. And we invested in the infrastructure. I think, I mentioned that to you when we had our initial call. There's a lot of co-packers out there, co-mans, all that good stuff, and they're great. Kind of changed in 2020 COVID era. A lot of those places closed down or got gobbled up by the big, I guess the big co-mans. So it was really hard. So we had to make a choice. It was like, hey, do we stay in this? And do we look at going elsewhere? And I'd heard horror stories. I'd heard success stories. I'd heard of things that people like their product was being changed by the people that were making it without their knowledge, again, to maybe cut some corners. And to me, like, I love the fact that I know what's going into the bar. I love the fact that I can see the production. I love the fact that I've literally worked with this since I started myself. So other people now that are in charge of director of operations, she's able to instruct and help other people how to make it. And again, it's on a grander scale than it was obviously in my kitchen, but it's nice to have like a huge commercial grade kitchen here with the equipment that is, capable of running 24/7 if we need it to be, and having different shifts. And like I said, cranking out a really good product where I see what goes into it. And I know, like, again, regardless if I'm on the floor day to day or anything, and I don't typically need to be now, the buck stops with me. So if something goes wrong, or, I respond to clients or people that customers that, some people don't realize, right, that they think they're reaching a huge company. And not to say that we're not, but like at the core of it is me and my wife, right? Or my wife and I. And I'll respond and be like, hey, like, understand what's going on. How can we make this right? If something didn't go the way you wanted it to, or if it did, like, we received some really, really positive reinforcement, not only from the bar itself, but from the story that we share and connect to the people that, again, I don't want to say it's a pandemic, but like people really identify with the story, either having a struggled themselves or have someone in their family that struggles. We get the best of both worlds when we share our journey.
So that's probably a good segue into how you guys did grow. So you started locally, you're doing your gym, you do local juice bars, you're at South Florida, and then you pick up Whole Foods in Florida, and then from there really seems to have scaled up quickly. And I know from personal experience that's kind of the pathway you take to grow. But as smooth as it sounds, there's a lot and a lot of problems. Can you walk me through what that was like, going from being able to see and manage all of your local distribution, check on stores, know the buyers, to suddenly the product is away from your control and you're kind of sitting there trying to figure out what's happening?
Yeah, no, I mean, a valid point. Obviously, when we stopped doing direct distribution and we started working with either brokers or a larger distribution that, targeted the places that we were selling, there's, several different people that get to touch the product. And sometimes, like you said in the intro, we get a notice of arrival, and then, if we can't be there, and again, when we started, we launched into Florida itself. We went to every Whole Foods, met every buyer, went above and beyond to introduce ourselves, like, hey, this isn't just some random product cranked out from where most bars are, either California or Texas and some in New Jersey. Like, this is ours. This is something that we're really passionate about. This is something that we're doing. And this is something that we want to make sure you understand. This is us. Like, come to us. Let us know. And, even locally, sometimes we ran into an issue where the product got delivered. We went there to do a demo. Oh, yeah, the product's on the shelf. Product's on the shelf. We get there. Product's on the shelf. The stickers aren't out. The notification that we're a product now available, again, in all the state. However, one store doesn't have it. And it was the one store that, like, when we went in, it was like, yeah, we'll get to you. And 3 weeks later, it's still sitting in the back on a pallet, which it was a little disappointing. But again, you can't yell, you can't scream. Everybody's trying to do their job, we hope. And, then we have to move it ourselves, or we hire a merchandising team, or we hire a demo team. And we've had some really great successes. We've also dealt with the fact that, like, people will take a photo. Oh, yeah, I'm here at the demo, whatever. We follow up with the store manager and they're like, yeah, no one was here today demoing your product. Yet we have somebody that says it and is requesting to be paid for 4 hours of doing demo work when they just kind of walked in, kind of fibbed a little and then just left. So again, there's all these things that can happen. And I learned from a lot of the shows and the trade shows, which I know are really important, but we kind of focused on more local because, again, with that national distribution, and a lot of what we learned is, while it has grown, it's taken us a lot of time to share that product. And there's, it's us, right? And there's a lot of bigger companies that have either started after me and sold, or about to sell, or are reaching heights that are just super awesome for them. And, we're still here, like, still working ourselves and learning the process. And some may say that's stupid. Some may say it is what it is. We look at it as like, this is our journey, right? Sure. Does the major exit sound really great? I've seen people with great products get bought out and then they kill the product. Now, if you're sitting with a big bag of money and your product that you poured your heart and soul and sweat into is cut and you're cool with it, great. What I think we feel is, sure, is that a great opportunity because we'd be able to do maybe even more in our community? Absolutely. However, we're doing this thing the way we're doing it and we're learning as we're going. Like I said, I never thought I'd be a machinist where I'm like taking apart machines, putting them back together. I never thought I'd be on the road, hey, sorry, there's no lift gate. What do you want me to do with this 25 pounds of peanut butter? Well, can you get it? Well, no, either take it off the truck or I'll see you in a week. Machine breaks. We got to call a specialist in from Atlanta. It's going to take 3 days, halts production for 3 days. And we've learned all these things along these like growing pains lines. Again, they can be super frustrating. They can be super discouraging. But at the end of the day, there is that aspect of like, hey, this is part of the process. So we know what to do if this were to happen again. Or if, I've talked to a lot of founders, a lot of different people over the years that are like, what would you do here? People always ask, oh, dude, how do I get into Whole Foods? It's a totally different era. It's a totally different thing than like we got into Whole Foods when Whole Foods was individually regional before Amazon and before it all became consolidated. So now that huge juggernaut moves even slower and like not one person makes a decision. So I say to anybody, if like you want to pitch your product or you want to share your product, just like anything else, walk in there, do your best and see what happens. But same thing. We had a story behind it. I hesitated to even share that story. Like you asked me about the sobriety journey. And again, I'm watching these people when they start trying the product, they like it. And I'm telling them about the bar. And it's like you could feel the yawn. You could feel like the And then my wife just stepped out and said, listen, guys, this is us. This is a story about second chances. This is a story about my husband. And I'm like, don't get choked up. I've seen Shark Tank. I've seen people cry. I've seen people get, like not like booed off stage, but like, hey, grow up. This is the real world. Held it together, but that's what really connected with the person in charge. And that's what really drove us. Now, it wasn't a yes then. It was like, hey, this is a great story. This is a great product. You need to do this, 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 and the next year. And if you do all those things, we'll give you a chance to be reviewed to see if you can even get on shelf.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes what it takes. Like we've been waiting 3 years for Whole Foods expansion, which, it's still in the works.
Yeah. I think that's the part when people think of retail, they don't realize sometimes it's all at once. Other times it's a multi-year journey to actually. Something I find really interesting about your product as well is that it is in the refrigerated section. We talked a bit about the competitors in that space, but how does that either present a challenge or an opportunity for you not being on the traditional shelf?
Well, it's harder to move in that category, in that space, while there is not as many. Like if you were to walk into any retail grocery store, usually the protein or the snack bar or the boxed granola bars, I mean, it's an entire aisle, right? So you're competing with all these different brands. What's great about our product, it tastes better refrigerated. And I always say that. It is shelf stable. We do have locations that are smaller chains or smoothies or coffee houses that put them out. We're in one high end grocer and they have it right at checkout. It's fine. It's like a cookie dough consistency. I just like it cold and nothing spoils in it. So again, shelf stable is great. What I like about that refrigerated, again, as a dessert guy, as a sweets guy, I just think it lends itself to a better taste upon eating it. But at the same time, I toss these things into my golf bag and, it's hot down here. So, South Florida heats everything up. So I think, you have to really choose what makes sense for you. And it might go against the grain. Like everybody was like, kept telling me, refrigerated snack bar? Really? Are you sure? Are you sure? Do you really? And in my head, I was like, this makes sense to me. And other places that we've either applied to in cycle of review have said, yeah, listen, great product, great story. We just don't have the bandwidth to do this right now because you can't just change one story. You have to change, let's just say 100 stores. And not to say that, that takes a lot of work, but it does on there. And I've seen the planograms. I've sat down. We know exactly where we fit in. We know exactly who we fit in next to. We know exactly what flavors we offer that other companies do not. And I think that's like what lends itself is like, hey, we're not going to take away from this category. We're not going to take away from what you guys are doing in volume with this product. We're just literally going to give you something that's might be, again, just saying this from my experience, just maybe a little bit healthier and have a different flavor profile than the standard chocolate, vanilla, or anything else. So like we worked really hard on the flavors over the years and we've had, I don't know, over 100 different iterations of what works and what doesn't work. And we're able to do that because we produce in-house, because we're able to sample and bring in the community that helped us get to all these flavors that taste this. You're in, South Florida and I'm like, hey, Jordan, come by and check this out. And you don't know what the flavor is. Chances are we're not going to do it because I don't want to explain something and oh, what is this? Is this peanut butter? I'm like, yes, it's a peanut butter base. And then we have 14 different iterations of that. And, if people don't get it, that means it's probably not going to be received well by a huge, bigger population, if you will. And that's what's the cool part about being able to do so many different. But again, we have our top five and we hammer those home. As we expand, sometimes we have to go down to top three because of space. Going back to the question you initially asked is, again, there's not a lot of fridge space, and if you're going to compete there, you better have a winner.
What is your top selling SKU? Like,
Birthday cake, chocolate chip cookie dough, toasted mallow, and our newest flavor that just launched into all the Whole Foods in the 10 states that we're in is pistachio. And that we created pistachio and an everything bagel. So two different flavors. They picked pistachio. And it was like literally right before Dubai chocolate thing took off and became a thing. So they loved it. But from the point of them saying yes, it took a full year for us to get on the shelf.
yeah, Dubai chocolate was hot last year. Is it still
That's
cruising? I haven't kept up with it as much.
I don't know, but I know that we're one of the only snack bar brands that does pistachio. And, like we did a savory line as well, like the everything bagel. We had a fun launch here. And for people that like it, they like it. But some people are like, dude, how can you do that? I said, if you've never had an everything bagel with peanut butter, you don't get it. So try that first. And if you like it, we're for you.
You can try that. So I know you guys are planning some bigger rollouts for the second half of this year. Obviously, a new SKU out, things are seemingly going well. What is that action plan like for you when you start to think about expanding? Even after 16 years, big pickups still create a lot of pain internally as well as operationally. How are you getting ready for the expansion? And if you're thinking about talking with another founder or somebody in the space, what is it that you do to get really like, hey, pick that new chain, new distribution, new SKU? How long is that process like to get prepared?
Yeah, I think we're pretty fortunate with what's coming up. We've kind of experienced on a smaller level. So it's just, again, scaling process. So again, I wish my wife was on this call because, she's behind the scenes and she's doing and having all the phone calls with the brokers and all the different people that we're talking to, the demo companies. And just like we did when we rolled out in the state of Florida, which was, again, we went from 4 stores to 8 stores to, I believe, like 40, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was truly letting go of that, hey, we're not going direct to the, buyer, we're going through another distribution point. So it was really trying to, get that communication, that process and developing those relationships. So if I were talking to another founder, I would just say, make sure you know your product, make sure you know who's on the receiving end, have the people inside, even though like some higher level people aren't there on the day to day, they can make certain emails or phone calls or suggestions go further faster. We're at that place, right, where you make a decision, you have a product, it's really good, you're doing really well, and it's like, do we want to make this a national brand? And I'll never forget a young lady who had really great success in the space with a drink that they sold. I ran into her at a show, and she's again, super nice lady, like so kind to us. Like she's very well respected. I don't want to say her on the call just because like I don't know if she'd like that or not. But she said, Matt, would you rather have slow growth and kind of weather the storm, or would you rather be in 15,000 stores where you're not doing any volume? And I said, I know I want to say 15,000 stores because of the exposure, but if I'm not selling, then that doesn't make sense. And she said, right. And she goes, if you're 15,000 stores and you don't have a plan and you're not selling, the chances of you being on the shelf within the year are really slim to zero. And it made sense. I didn't like hearing it, but it made sense. And she just said, like, listen, I know this is a grind. I know this is tough. I know you believe in your product. I love your product. We had the same feeling with some of the things we tried before we found the winner that we kind of went with for their company. But that's where we're at. So I would say, like, be prepared, right? Like we thought we were ready 2 years ago, and with our production, right, in the manufacturing and the machines and the things that we brought in, it took some time to work through the kinks and work through some of the challenges of the machine process. And even people, like I said, that go co-man or co-pack, sometimes they're like, oh yeah, that delivery you're supposed to get in 2 weeks, sorry, we had an issue, it's going to be pushed back another 2 months. And you're like, and you have no control, you just have to sit there and take it. Again, that's just from my conversations with other business owners. So again, like I think with a growth process is having that plan and developing the PR behind it, the social media component, the direct line to the buyers, the direct communication with everybody that's kind of going to touch your product on the way out the door here on the pallets to the actual shelf. And sometimes it's boots on the ground. Like sometimes we've had to fly to a different state and be like, we're here. And they're like, you don't need to be here. I'm like, we're here anyway. We're here because we want to make sure that it goes from there to the shelf and we see it and we can talk about it and we can share it. And that's what I think we're most excited about as we expand, right? Is getting back. I'm from New York originally. I'm just like wanted nothing more than my 85-year-old mother to leave her house, drive to the grocery store, and pick up a product that I created after making a lot of really shitty choices in life. Just so she, like that means that's a big deal to me. And it might sound corny to some, but like we're in a couple places up there by her in New York. When that one major retailer starts carrying it and she can walk in there and just be like, wow, my son did this. And his wife and the team down there, like she knows, she's seen it, she's been here. I'm pretty excited for that.
Excited for you. That's the redemption story everybody wants. And I mean, personally, I really appreciate you coming on here, talking to me about your journey and about Fro and what's next. I've really enjoyed it. I can't wait to check out the product myself. So I'm going to head to the Whole Foods. I'll grab some bars, but I can't wait to try it and support this. And I hope everybody listening, if you're interested in trying an amazing product from a great company, check out FroPro. It sounds like it's growing, and I'm sure you can find out more locations on their store locator on the website. And from our,
Yes.
thank you so much for joining. And what we always like to remind you is if you have distribution, if you have any velocity gaps, if you have authorized SKUs that are missing, if you get those photos from shoppers saying, hey, I'm in store and I don't see your product, come visit shopwitheileen.com and we can book some audits for you. We'll give you 10 for free to check out what you're looking like at the store floor. So we really appreciate it. Matt, again, thank you so much for your time. And as always, know thyself.